Hi everyone. So today I thought I would do another reading and read from D.S. Marriott's Before Whiteness. I had actually started to work on this particular collection last year and I was writing a paper and I have a lot of things to say, things that can't be fit into a small video, but I'll try and do my best and I will actually read another burning. That's the whole point of making this video. I want to share this poem with everyone, so I'll read another burning and thoughts which are related to this particular poem. I will talk about them. So I think one of the things that affect us at the very onset of reading this particular poem is how blackness is represented in language, and that is actually a very important theme for D.S. Marriott. It is actually something which he derives from the critical writings of Jean Paul-Sartre through Frantz Fanon to Aimé Césaire. So that's actually a trajectory which is very important for the theorization of negritude, and D.S. Marriott is actually conversant with that particular tradition of thought. And so just to kind of give you a sense of what I'm talking about, Jean Paul-Sartre, in one of his essays on What is Literature, writes that uh, blackness is characterized by Christ-like suffering, which actually redeems blackness in the light, in the eyes of the uh, reader. So that is something that Sartre argues, and it is quite interesting. Actually, a lot of things that Sartre says is actually important to take into account. But the most significant aspect of Sartre's thought is that he conflates the position of the black poet with the Christ-like, with Christ almost. So there's this conflation. And the black poet takes on the whole of suffering upon himself, human suffering, and suffers for all, and that is what gives his presence a certain credibility. um, so that is what negritude symbolizes for Sartre. And moving on from Sartre towards Aimé Césaire and Fanon, we get to the point where negritude no longer holds a state that can be effectively reached by the black poet, and neither is it a state that can be longed for either. So that is something which Césaire and Fanon argue, that it is a state which is never achieved in language, and because it is never achieved, there can be no possible recovery of blackness as essence. So that is again another important thread of thought which is developed by Fanon and Sartre. And so D.S. Marriott, interestingly, also makes this claim that um, uh, you know not only can negritude not be reached in language, negritude in itself kind of symbolizes a certain sense of passivity, a certain sense of passive suffering, which language, effectively language as it is wielded by non black writers, though that kind of language can never project blackness as protest or blackness as rebellion. So neither can't it can't be reached as a state of suffering, a state that can give essence to or value to the black individual. It almost always, the forms of representing blackness in language is a form of representing it as passivity. So that is what is argued by D.S. Marriott, and I find that extremely interesting as a philosophical point of uh, mm, argument. And so I will kind of read another burning and any other thought which alights into my mind, alights, I will kind of discuss it. This paper is on fire, being human as it incinerates itself, lit from within as if being of earth was itself to be earthed. A shock, a final purifying stroke, lighting up. the most dangerous approach, descending. This paper is on fire, and the earth is a room inside the flames. Incinerare, breathed like a rope of air, where we took our final faltering steps down smoke filled stairs, down narrow corridors, a roaring in our ears, open mouthed, blindsided, our throats already burning from the portrayal. And I, like you, among the mute, the breathless, the thrice taken denials, never promise enough. Every stumbling step, a forest you struggle through, waiting, penned in. Can't you hear it? Approaching. The crumbling columns of desuetude, the summits heaving, sweating, are out surprising wisps of air, like an exhalation rushing over rags. You, roadmen, doused and sussed, uttering the tolls for the longest journey, like a word falling easily through inflamed lips. Blackness wasn't in the language we saw it being evacuated, but we still inhabited the ashes. This part is actually very striking for me. Blackness wasn't in the language because, as I was saying, negritude for um, uh, D.S. Marriott signifies a certain kind of passivity which can never be made into rebellion within the boundaries of language as we have it. So that is something um, which is interesting. And any kind of signification of blackness in language carries with it the history of muteness and passivity, and the history of enslavement. So um, to have blackness be presented in language as resistance is almost something which can't figure. The obscure, obsolescent threshold never entered, already neglected, never spotted, never grasped. The impasse, unable to go up or down in the prosaic light of faith, tiptoeing to catastrophe. Words falling ever downwards, the air on fire, and as we stumble forward, a vacuum, we breathed in its ferocity to fall like a word not yet fallen, but burning, separated, unable to cross from landing to safety, a fall that has not yet happened. The breath that you don't own is not yours to breathe. Hear them, the long doomed Iftar, the already ashen Bolari, and in the black smoke a discarded belga left lying in the ruins. Each sentence meaningless as tall burning buildings loom and time seizes, staggered by fear and shame, a story in each story, each falling. The story is the story within the building built on charred names. At the end of the day, dust settling, breathed in, as each gaze turns away, and there's nothing to distinguish a tar from an incinerated outline. This paper is on fire, lifted out into the void, into lives lived without air, the unknown heights recognized in rooms where there is no emergency exit. There is no trace, for here everything is lost, trapped without rescue, and each room is a cliff where we are perched on a rim of burning flame, and each door is a vista where we shall be shipped back to the blaze, brought back to the unknown shore like birds returning back to unachieved seas, the untold dis of our dear fallen heirs transported from earth into air, and the fire breaking in waves, a sea from which we were never meant to be rescued or leave, every sentence then a station of the last, the buckle that stays before it can be grasped. So this is again very significant because I feel in the process of describing the disaster of the Grenfell Tower, he is actually kind of bringing into words his own theoretical configurations about negritude and blackness. And interestingly, so I will kind of stop right now at this particular juncture um, and continue with the reading of the poem in the next installment of the reading. There's still a significant amount left. So I will read that in the next reading.